So, good evening and good morning, good afternoon for people who have joined from different parts of the world. At the outset, I'd like to thank Dr. Bharat Jayaraman, Amrita Institute for Advanced Research, for this opportunity to, share some thoughts on Ayurveda and how it can contribute to the emerging field of integrative medicine. So, today's talk, is divided into 5 sections. As indicated by the title, I'll first introduce what Ayurveda is from an Indian context, and then, talk a little bit about the emerging integrative medicine movement at the global level. And then we explore the ancient roots of Ayurveda and how it seamlessly connects with the modern development of healthcare and what is in hold for Ayurveda, and the contributions it can make in the near future. So this is how the lecture is planned. In fact, the title itself is a snapshot of what we are going to discuss today. So I'd like to first, remember and bring Amma into the picture. She's Mata Amritanandamayi, the Chancellor of Amrita University, and it is through her inspiration that many things are happening at our university, including, these developments in the field of Ayurveda. So here's a quick view of where I come from. This is the beautiful campus of Amrita University in Kollam, Kerala, adjacent to Amma's ashram. And this is where the School of Ayurveda is located. I wanted to give you a glimpse of our campus and the facilities here. So you can see, I'm just skipping through these slides very quickly. This is one of our Panchakarma theaters where you can do classical Ayurvedic treatments. We also have modern, amenities, well-equipped classrooms, and teaching labs. So it's a combination of a hospital, a college, and a research center where we have some advanced labs. So this is where I come from. And first, of course, I prepared for a global audience, so anticipating that many of those who attend may not be well aware of what Ayurveda is. But if it looks very basic, please excuse me. So Ayurveda is literally the knowledge of life. That's what it means. So it's a very nice name for a medical system, which says that, we have to look at health in totality in the context of our life itself. Ayush means life and Veda means, knowledge or science. So I think in that way, Ayurveda is one of the unique systems of medicine which has such a, broad and inclusive terminology itself, because all other systems are known as medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, traditional European medicine, so known by the region where it developed. I mean, modern medicine is more focused on curing, whereas Ayurveda takes life in its totality, and it doesn't give an Indian identity to the name of the medical system. It just says knowledge of life. So wherever there is life, Ayurveda is relevant, and that's the vision. So also it covers human, animal, and plant life in its scope. It's not restricted to only humans, and that's why it's called knowledge of life. And in Ayurveda, we see very early ideas of One Health and planetary health, that, the well-being of the whole creation is needed for humanity to discover higher levels of health and well-being. Ayurveda has been around for more than 3,000 years. It originated in India and also spread, fairly in all parts of the ancient world at one point of time. So in Ayurveda, we have had amazing traditions very, very early. You can see even many thousands of years ago, Ayurveda specialized and branched out into various disciplines, clinical disciplines like medicine, surgery, woman and child health. Is interesting that instead of pediatrics and obstetrics and gynecology, the child and mother were considered as one unit. In fact, it's more accurately mother and child health. That's my mistake when I typed it. In Ayurveda, we look at it as mother and child health. Then it's psychiatry, geriatrics and rejuvenation, ophthalmology, dentistry, ENT, toxicology, reproductive medicine, physical medicine, orthopedic. These are all the various clinical specialties evolved as traditions over many thousands of years. And these are very systematized knowledge. So you can see that all this practical knowledge were codified in a very structured way. And we have various types of formats for codifying medical knowledge in Ayurveda, like the generalized compendia, with examples are Charaka, Sushruta, Ashtanga, Hridaya, Ashtanga, Sangraha, then specialized compendia like Madhava, Nidana, Sharngadhara, Samhita, focusing only on a particular subject like diagnostics, pharmacy, and then drug lexicons, which are just, focusing on drug sources and their properties. So we have a large number of such medical lexicons like Dhanvantari Nikandu, Bhava Prakash Nikandu, and then there are formularies, Yoga Ratnakara, Sahasra Yoga, monographs on just on fevers or on, classification of herbs, and then elaborate commentaries on all these texts. So we have very rich Ayurvedic literature along with the traditions. So this shows that throughout the centuries, Ayurveda has attempted to codify the medical knowledge, separating, what is effective, what is validated from what is not, and only the time-tested, kind of knowledge got into these texts. And there are great traditions of teachers, different schools. For example, the medical school, we have big names like Atreya, Agnivesha, Charaka, Dridhabala, Dhanvantari, Sushruta, Nagarjuna, Jejada. In the surgical school, medical school is Atreya. Pediatric school, we have different names. So this is quite fascinating that Ayurveda was built by the efforts of innumerable number of people. It's not just one person's, discourse. And a Dutch scholar has actually done a monumental work, which to date happens to be the most comprehensive account of the history of Ayurveda, history of Indian medical literature, in which he lists a large number of great teachers who developed Ayurveda through the ages. So I just showed that to show that Ayurveda has a very learned tradition and a history of evolution and systematization. It has not remained static over the centuries. Now we come to Ayurveda. In the pre-colonial period, it was sidled idle by Western medicine policies when the first medical college was established in India in 1835. The teaching of Ayurveda was actually, banned. And it has survived in that period, mainly through the momentum of tradition and community practice without any, state support. It was in the post-independence period that Ayurveda got recognized as part of India's medical heritage, and colleges, universities, and standardized curricula began to be set up. So as an outcome of this initiative, we have now professional degrees, BAMS, MD, PhD established. So Ayurveda is one of the complementary alternative systems, if you look at the global scenario, that enjoys, certain privileges, at least in India. I mean, it's recognized as an independent medical system. You can get licensed in the system, unlike many other complementary alternative medicines, which are not mainstreamed in other parts of the world. And having said that, it's also important to know that India has nurtured a pluralistic healthcare system, and there are other, traditional systems like yoga, naturopathy, homeopathy, Unani, and Siddha that are also recognized in India under the umbrella term Ayush. So in India, Ayurveda today has a regulatory framework with bodies like the National Commission for Indian System of Medicine regulating education and practice. There are pharmacopoeial standards for Ayurvedic formulations and an exclusive ministry Ministry of Ayush, which is like a Ministry of Health for traditional system, which, oversees the developments in the field of Ayurveda and takes steps to integrate it into the healthcare system and nurture research. So if you look at the human resources and infrastructure, this brief introduction aims to give an idea that, Ayurveda is a living tradition in India. If you look at allopathic practitioners, we have 13,86,150. So, and Ayurveda is 751. I mean, Ayush practitioners are about half of the modern practitioners. The Ayush field, 751,768, with at least 50% being Ayurveda. So even at the Ayush domain, Ayurveda dominates. There are about 150 undergraduate colleges in India with about 31,790 seats. Every year so many students come out. Only 62 are government colleges, which means majority are private initiatives for teaching in the field of Ayurveda. And so compared to out of 32,000, maybe around 5,000 come from government. We also have postgraduate education, 140 institutions offering about 4,600 seats. In modern India, the Ministry of Ayush is co-locating Ayurveda practitioners within the public healthcare system, in public health centers, in community health centers, in district hospitals. So this provides an environment where patients can choose, different medical systems under one roof. Apart from that, there are exclusive government Ayurveda hospitals, dispensaries, wellness centers, which exist across many states. And the ministry also, supplies essential Ayurvedic drugs to government Ayurveda hospitals and dispensaries. On the other hand, the private sector is very vibrant with many Ayurveda clinics, specialty centers, wellness spas, retreat centers, pharmaceutical companies, integrative medicine clinics. Having said that, a word of caution, Ayurveda is still in the process of being systematized and regulated. So we have to be on the lookout for not so authentic and not so well-established practices. And currently, the Ministry of Ayush is taking a lot of steps to make sure that, we are able to weed out the spurious practices. But this is a work in progress. So anybody coming to India to get authentic Ayurvedic treatment must be a little cautious and careful. Now, with this brief overview of Ayurveda, we'll look at integrative medicine and then try to see how Ayurveda can be integrated with this, emerging healthcare movement. Now, if you look at integrative medicine, what we can understand is that it's basically been a patient-driven movement. Even in India, I mean, if you really ask who wants integration, I don't think either the traditional medicine practitioner, complementary alternative medicine practitioner, or the modern medical practitioner is really keen on that. I mean, everybody is working in their own silos. It is actually the patient who, confronted with unmet needs and treatment gaps, are exploring for options. And this is how the integrative medicine movement emerged globally. Because of the dissatisfaction with the limits of conventional care, patients have been exploring alternative modalities of healing. And this couldn't be ignored. And that's how complementary and alternative medicine got the attention, by global regulatory authorities and the scientific community, because they felt the need that this needs to be studied because people are getting exposed and we cannot let them be harmed. So it's also important to know that this whole emergence of complementary alternative medicine has been in a complementary mode, not a rejection of modern medicine. It's just to fill, treatment gaps, unmet needs, make the practice of medicine more complete. So why have patients been looking beyond in the global, scenario? Because of gaps in chronic disease care, like pain, IBS, depression, side effects, and rising costs of drugs, a deep desire to, get into preventive regimen, wellness, and quality of life which the current healthcare system is not able to adequately provide. So in this background, people have been looking for alternatives. And when this was recognized, there has been initiatives like the NIH Office of Alternative Medicine, which is today known as the NCCIH, National Center for Complementary Integrative Health, with the goals being evidence-based integration. I mean, people are anyway going to seek these alternate modalities. So the idea is that then let's do research, identify, validate the effective practices from the ineffective, and then integrate them. So that is this. In this background, we can see that a lot of integrative medicine centers got established in US universities with a focus on research to validate these practices and then integrate them safely and develop protocols that will enable these treatments to be offered within mainstream healthcare. So the goal at least seems to be that patients shouldn't be exposed to harmless therapies, and there's no harm in accepting what is good in complementary and alternative medicine. So the scenario is very different in India and globally. In India, Ayurveda has had its own trajectory of growth with its independence, as an independent system of medicine, whereas globally, complementary and alternative medicine have worked within this framework of not being legally recognized, but being sought after by patients and then being brought into an integrative framework. I think understanding of the difference of this dynamics is very essential when we want to bring Ayurveda and modern medicine into the platform of integrative care. So just to look at a very brief history of the evolution of integrative medicine, it all began perhaps in the 1820s to 1860s when alternative medical systems emerged. Because at that time, modern medicine was known as allopathy, and homeopathy was the antithesis philosophically, but then modern allopathy evolved into what we today know as modern medicine. There were many other systems of medicine like hydrotherapy, eclectic medicine, chiropractic, osteopathy. And in 1910, there was a landmark event, the Flexner Report, which was a very strong critique of non-scientific medicine. And this led to closure of many camp schools. So you can see the parallel in British India when the first medical college was established, traditional systems being closed down. In Europe, in US also, we have a parallel somewhat, but in a totally different context, not in a colonial kind of ecosystem. But this confrontation has happened between scientific medicine and alternate systems of healing, be it in India or in the US. In 1950s, 60s, there was a reversal, globalization happened, and this brought systems like Ayurveda, yoga, and TCM to the West. Ayurveda was much slower in penetrating. Traditional Chinese medicine, gained much greater traction and visibility in the global scenario. And in 1960s, we had the counterculture and holistic health movement. Acupuncture entered US after Nixon's China visit. And in 1978, the US Office of Technology Assessment Studies, started studying unconventional cancer treatment. So it's in 80s and 90s that complementary and alternative medicine emerges as a category because of the growing popularity of herbs, meditation, holistic medicine, health. In 1993, there was a landmark study that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, which reported that 34% of Americans are using complementary and alternative medicine, and that visits to complementary and alternative medicine practitioners could outnumber, the visits to MD. So this raised a lot of concern. So in 1991, the Office of Alternative Medicine was established at NIH. And in 1998, it got upgraded to a National Center for Complementary and Alternative Medicine, NCCAM. You can see in the 2000s, major medical schools established integrative medicine centers. In 2002, WHO issued a strategy on traditional medicine. This was a landmark initiative which brought a lot of visibility and focus on traditional medical systems. Braywell Collaborative promotes integrative medicine in hospitals. So in about a decade and a half, we can see that eventually a shift happened towards integration. And now we are in the process of formalization of integrative medicine. 2014 NCCAM has been renamed as NCCIH. This reflects a big shift in perception. The word alternative is no longer present even in the title of this national center. It was National Center for Complementary Alternative Medicine. It has now become National Center for Complementary Integrative Health. So we can see there's a clear shift from perceiving other medical or healthcare approaches as alternative to something which is complementary and integrative. So you can see in 2010s and 20s, integrative medicine started gaining more recognition, cancer supportive care, academic centers. And today in the US, what you can see is a whole person health approach, whole health. There's some universities even reframing their position as a whole health university. So this is the snapshot from camp to integrative medicine. So this had its roots in the 19th century. And from 2014, in the next one decade, we can see integrative medicine slowly establishing itself. So we have now looked at how Ayurveda is placed and positioned in India and how integrative medicine is emerging in the global scenario. And now we'll have a quick look in the next part of our discussion on what is the scope of Ayurveda. Can Ayurveda and modern medicine meet? And can they be meaningfully integrated? So I look at Ayurveda as a tradition, what potential it has, for future development and integration. And we look at what kind of work is being done today to facilitate such an integration and what are the future directions. So that's what we look at in the next part of our discussion. Ayurveda has always emphasized itself as a rational system. So, for example, knowledge is created, by a lot of hard work, by observation, by inference, reasoning. So we have Sanskrit terms for all that. It's not just, what somebody thinks in a fancy way in his mind. It's painful observation over centuries. They may not have had all the sophisticated tools that we have, but they did spend a lot of time observing, reasoning. Charaka talks about continuous validation. Sushruta emphasizes that in order to be a good surgeon, you need to do dissection, experimentation, study anatomy. We have in Ayurveda also a lot of debates and discussions on how do we know, that a patient gets better because of a medicine or otherwise. So this discussion about placebo, spontaneous remission, the real effect of medicine versus a chance effect, these are all discussed. So disease and health are outcomes of cause and effect chain reactions. And it's by understanding the cause and applying countermeasures that the effect can be reversed. There is an emphasis on the need to distinguish, real effective medicine and a favorable outcome due to chance. So the texts say we need to establish causality. There are discussions on how to study relationships between variables, and then also how sensitive, these relationships are, how specific they are. So for lack of time and for avoiding too much of technicality and Sanskrit, I'm not going into the detail, but just to give a feel that, Ayurveda was moving in the direction of, evidence-based, validated knowledge system. So one very interesting thing that happened in the evolution of Ayurveda is that it categorized healing into three modalities. It was not possible to completely be rational, also for reasons Ayurveda has been taking a very accommodative and inclusive approach, but it distinguishes rational approach to healing, which Ayurveda called as Yukti Vipashraya, where you have clear understanding of mechanism of action and you focus on safety, efficacy, mechanism of action, the three pillars of rational healing. You know whether it's safe, you know whether it works, and you know how it works. Then you have Sattva Vijaya, which is, inner healing initiated by the patients through mental control, positive thinking. And then also Deva Vipashraya, spiritual religious healing recommended as an add-on to support patient belief system. So while Ayurveda accepted all this, it clearly distinguished the rational form of healing. And the classical texts basically focus more on what is called as Yukti Vipashraya, saying that according to context, we will also need to use other modalities. Really, whatever helps the patient to get better, Ayurveda accepted it. So that also shows it was not very rigid and, it was quite flexible in that matter, although it stuck to a rational approach. So then, if you look at the evolutionary history of Ayurveda, this needs to be put in historical context to imagine that 3,000 years ago, there were clearly, identifiable medical and surgical schools, people arguing whether a treatment needs surgery or only medicine. And Charaka, for example, saying that this is beyond my expertise. I have to refer them to the surgeon. People referring to each other, you can think, 3,000 years ago, to imagine this kind of specialization is quite mind-boggling. And then Sushruta emphasizing on, detailed dissection of the human body at a time when touching the human body was sometimes considered to make one impure. Sushruta was uncompromising. He said that the student has to touch, dissect, and understand anatomy in order to be a surgeon. And Sushruta's surgical instruments are really amazing because he classifies them into sharps and contrivances and describes about 125 odd surgical instruments. Many of them still survive, in modern practice of surgery, including the name, the shape. Things have not changed much since Sushruta's times. Sushruta's description of the basic surgical procedures still remain the same today. And at a time when anesthesia, technologies like blood transfusion and other supportive assistive methods were unavailable, Sushruta boldly attempted to do very big surgeries, including open abdomen surgery, repairing the intestine, and also plastic surgery. In fact, Sushruta's practice of rhinoplasty actually paved the way for the development of plastic surgery in modern medicine, as documented by visitors from the UK to India during the colonial period. Now we are talking a lot about vaccination, but the precursor of vaccination called inoculation was first practiced perhaps in India and China. Smallpox was, handled by a practice of inoculation. Before the disease comes, these sadhus would move around inoculating people with the, dried pus of people who were affected in the previous round of infection. And they will get a mild infection and then would become immune for life. So you find in Ayurveda also deep questions about genetic basis of disease and even ideas that, the whole human body is hardwired into the seed, which is present in the father and the mother, the genetic material in the father and the mother, and that if the genetic material is harmed, it's damaged, then there would be genetic diseases. So these are all very, very early and very kind of progressive ideas that you can see in the evolutionary history of Ayurveda. Some of the early ideas about blood circulation, respiration are vividly described in classical Ayurvedic texts. So this is also a very interesting area for revisit to understand the history of medicine and its evolution. Adequate work has not been done to study the contributions of Ayurveda. So this is the ancient Ayurvedic system, which is quite rational in its outlook, very progressive and, very compatible with what we are today calling as evidence-based medicine. That's what I wanted to show in this section. So now what are we doing in India to bring in modern evidence so that, Ayurveda can meet the current, healthcare system? So we can see globally there is a rising demand in integrative contexts. Yoga, meditation, turmeric, ashwagandha, these are all kind of becoming popular. We also have NIH, Ayush collaborations. So already some mechanisms are in place, which is enabling Ayurveda community to engage in dialogues with the modern medical community on a global scale, although it's at a very nebulous or beginning stage now. There has been not too many studies because recently I came to know from the WHO, I mean official, that if you look at health system research globally, traditional medicine worldwide receives only 1% funding for health systems research. It's just 1%. So you cannot do too many things with that. But considering the limited resources available and the limited kind of funding provided, there have been some really, compelling kind of studies that show us that there's a lot of potential in bringing evidence into the field of Ayurveda. So there was one study in which I was myself involved, published in 2011, the whole system Ayurveda in rheumatoid arthritis, which was funded by the National Institutes of Health. It still remains the only NIH-funded study to evaluate Ayurveda outside the United States. There was another study, whole system Ayurveda in osteoarthritis. I'm sorry, I missed to complete that sentence, by Christian Kessler and team from the Charité University in Germany. This was a one of its kind study funded by the Ministry of Ayush in Germany. And these studies showed that carefully designed Ayurvedic treatment protocols tested in rigorous, scientific design shows that Ayurveda is quite promising in the management of these chronic diseases. There are also other studies like whole system Ayurveda in irritable bowel syndrome, and then ashwagandha RCTs for stress, sleep, and cognition. So with the limited resources, there are these kind of studies which show that there's potential, the contributions that Ayurveda can make in these chronic, areas. Now, here is a snapshot of the NIH-funded study. I'm not going to go into the detail, but if you look at the graph here, what it shows is that compared to study week 24, which is 6 months into the trial, and 9 months into study week 36, the big difference was that at the end of 6 months, Ayurvedic treatment was not so impressive. But at 9 months, the Ayurvedic group responded better than the standard of care methotrexate group for rheumatoid arthritis. So this study showed that over a long period of time, Ayurveda is giving more stable responses in rheumatoid arthritis patients, which is comparable to a disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drug. And I'm happy to say that this study is now being replicated on a larger scale with the involvement of Dr. Daniel First from the UCLA in collaboration with the Ministry of Ayush. And Amrita School of Ayurveda is one of the centers participating in a multi-center trial to revalidate in a larger sample the outcomes of the study. So other interesting things are that, a cardiologist, a very famous cardiologist in India, Dr. M.S. Valiathan, he started what is called as a science initiative in Ayurveda and was able to, for the first time, come up with preliminary evidence correlating Ayurvedic concept of prakriti or constitution with genomics. And he was also able to show that rasayana, which in Ayurveda is, a treatment modality for modulating and optimizing your immune system, slowing down aging. In preclinical models, it showed very great promise. For the first time, we could come up with some publications in high-impact index journals globally. There was a study on Panchakarma, and one of the treatments in Ayurveda called Vasti, which is medicated enema, has been found to have immunomodulatory properties. So this is a summary of this Ayurveda biology initiative by M.S. Valiathan, where he says that we have to recast Ayurveda, not just as a tradition, but as a field to be interpreted to biology. And he coined the term Ayurvedic biology. And he brought, traditional practitioners and modern scientists of India together. All these studies were collaborative projects with a multidisciplinary, approach, where an Ayurveda institution, a modern medical institution, a science institution like the premium institutions in India, like IIT, IISC, Center for Molecular Biology, all the major institutes came together to do these landmark studies. So, for example, Rasayana research, fly experiments with Amalaki Rasayana shows that, it has a potential for enhancing lifespan, stress tolerance, genomic stability. One study showed that Amalaki Rasayana can prevent DNA damage but not reverse it. So a deeper study can give us better understanding of what works and what does not work. And though we are still in the preclinical stages, we need to do a lot more human studies to validate all this. I think we are at the beginning of a new era of research in Ayurveda. So Prakriti Genomics Bridge, this was published in Scientific Reports, which is part of the Nature group, although not the top Nature journal, but still it's a good beginning for Ayurveda to bring out a publication on that platform. So M.S. Valiathan also talked about understanding Ayurvedic epistemology by looking at synergy over reductionism, multi-scale integration, systems biology, and also cross-disciplinary research. So currently, these are all pilot studies. So we need to do deeper mechanistic and clinical translation. There is a risk of oversimplification. But still, these are big steps in a positive direction. There's another concept that emerged in India, which is called reverse pharmacology. Reverse pharmacology is a term coined by Ashok Vaidya, a very eminent pharmacologist in India, who said that what we have to do in Ayurveda is to look at what is clinically validated by physicians and then study them in the lab rather than going from lab to clinic, because in India, we have a living tradition of Ayurveda. You can look at what patients are actually, doctors are actually, Ayurveda physicians are actually doing at the point of care and get clues from that and test these formulations in the lab and then come back with enhanced formulations using modern technology and, more sophisticated drug delivery systems. I think this is a very rich area where you can understand a lot of synergism, like curcumin with piperine is much, much more effective, and that just curcumin alone. Certain Ayurvedic herbs have compounds that are water soluble, which is why probably the ancient people made decoctions of some herbs, whereas lipid extracts of some other herbs, alcoholic extracts of some other herbs, they combine. So this is a very rich resource. If we use modern AI, create computational libraries of all these formulations and data on how clinicians use it, I think with AI, we can create predictive models, which could later be experimentally tested. This can reduce the complexity of research in Ayurveda. So with Ayurveda biology, reverse pharmacology, and now with the emerging tool of AI and its applications, the Ministry of Ayush has taken a big initiative in AI and is developing the Ayush grid and is trying to bring in more and more applications of AI in Ayurveda, and especially in areas like drug-herb interactions, where it's very difficult to experimentally validate herb-drug interactions, very time-consuming process. We know the chemical composition of almost all the Ayurvedic herbs. We also know the pathways and mechanisms of action of modern drugs. Now, this could all be fed into an AI model, and we can start asking AI to make predictions, high priority predictions. And a few of these predictions could be experimentally tested. We could get clinical feedback. And through a feedback loop, AI can learn and become more and more accurate in predicting these. I think without AI, it's going to be impossible in the future to predict drug-herb interactions. Because it's simply not possible to completely. So when you look at integration practice, we have integrative centers All India Institute of Medical Sciences, many places have this. In Amrita also, we have taken an initiative to bring in integrative medicine. And some of the areas where this is happening is cancer care, diabetes, mental health programs, and then also lifestyle clinics. And in this context, I want to say also that, I was part of this initiative, bringing in Ayurveda into integrative oncology. We are working for a special interest group on Ayurveda in the Society for Integrative Oncology, and where there is collaboration of experts from, oncologists from MD Anderson, MSKK, NCI, and this opportunity to position Ayurveda in the global platform of integrative oncology. This is an article that appeared in CA, a cancer journal for clinicians, which happens to be the highest impact factor journal in any discipline. And this shows that there's a kind of an emerging interest, especially in complex diseases like cancer. The reason why people want integrative care in cancer is not just because modern medicine has not, progressed. There's been tremendous progress in cancer care in recent times, but the disease is so complex that you need, a multi-pronged approach. Sometimes we have to go into a multi-paradigmatic approach to understand the complexities of diseases like cancer and address all the needs of the patients. So now I'm coming to the last part of my discussion today is, with this background, what are the future directions that we can take? And especially I'm interested in suggesting a few areas in the field of, botanicals and natural product development. What Ayurveda can bring in is a paradigm shift in healthcare. If you were to make a snapshot of, what is Ayurveda offering, this is what is there. First is an emphasis on planetary health, and then personalized medicine, mental health with Ayurveda's paradigm of the body-mind axis, gut-brain axis, healthy lifestyle, balanced diet, natural products, plant, animal, mineral sources, predictive, preventive medicine, especially for anticipating chronic diseases and preventing them, reproductive health and healthy aging. Put together, this framework will ensure that the focus of the healthcare is on prevention. Prevention first. A minimalist approach where we don't go into invasive, cost-intensive, technology-intensive, treatments, and also to avoid the burden of disease. This kind of a paradigm shift is something which Ayurveda can bring in. So, especially personalized medicine. This is one area where old Ayurvedic ideas can give a model. I'm not saying that everything in Ayurveda is, perfect for personalized medicine. Ayurveda could give a template and a lot of clues on how modern knowledge could be integrated into that framework of personalized medicine. We could use new technologies, multi-omics, and strengthen the Ayurvedic approach of personalized medicine by linking Prakriti with genomics and create a precision medicine and systems biology that is holistic in its outlook. If you look at planetary health, Ayurveda brings in the idea of seasonal, local, sustainable diets, harmony of body, society, and environment. And some of the pointers for future work is pragmatic trials and whole system research, AI-driven personalized Ayurveda tools, and transdisciplinary collaborations. Now, the last point that I want to make is the potential of Ayurveda to drive what I would call as a botanical innovation. The Ayurvedic tradition has documented about 1,500 plus medicinal plants, and we know some of these widely popular plants are like turmeric, anti-inflammatory, cancer adjunct, ashwagandha for stress, cognition, boswellia for arthritis. Rauwolfia was one of the earliest to be identified, discovered for its antihypertensive action, but the chemical isolated was too toxic that it couldn't be, sustain on a long run. Triphala for gut health, microbiome modulation. And what's interesting is that current phytochemical research has revealed that these traditional practices too have a scientific basis, a phytochemical basis. There are some mechanisms that are being unraveled, like turmeric, curcumin, not only curcumin, but there are many other compounds also in turmeric, like turmeron. They are lipophilic, they need to be made bioavailable, and if delivered in an efficient manner, it can work as an anti-inflammatory and cancer adjuvant. Ashwagandha do have compounds with alloids which help in stress, cognition, and sleep. Boswellia has boswellic acids, Rauwolfia, reserpine. Brahmi has bacosides, which are shown to work on memory and neuroprotection. The polyphenols in Triphala help in gut health and microbiome modulation. So now the whole idea is that we know that there are these chemicals which are beginning to show interesting activity, but the real contribution that Ayurveda can make, I think, is in engineering molecular cocktails, because Ayurveda uses multi-herb, multi-compound formulations. Modern drug discovery is focused on isolating a single molecule. But the thing is, complex diseases, we are beginning to understand, need multi-targeting, multi-target modulation. And that's where, when we study the traditional Ayurvedic formulations and their modality of action, we could actually bring about a new pathway of molecular combinatorics inspired by traditional medicine, which makes use of the rich resource of the Ayurvedic and natural pharmacopoeia and all that is known by tradition and modern research, and guided by Ayurvedic principles and clues. For example, to provide a conceptual framework, Ayurveda could contribute with a polyherbal logic, Trikadu for bioavailability enhancement, Triphala for detox, antioxidant support. There are synergy principles like using an anupana or a vehicle, catalytic herbs called yogavahi, shodhana or purifying and processing the herbal combination so that they're less toxic, and then finally personalizing the combination so that it works optimally for each individual. With this clue from Ayurveda, network pharmacology can map compounds to multiple protein targets and pathways. Chemoinformatics and combinatorial chemistry simulates molecular interactions and synergies, drug-drug interaction profiling. So bringing these two frameworks together can create potential pathways for new natural products, which are inspired by Ayurveda but enhanced by modern technology. So bioavailability boosted cocktails, I'll just use some modern sounding terms for what Ayurveda would simply call as a yoga or a gana. So using Ayurveda's yogavahi agents like bioavailability enhancers like piperine in combinatorial cocktails to enhance absorption of other poorly bioavailable drugs. Curcumin, piperine, quercetin, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer synergy, synergistic polyphenol mixes, Ayurvedic rasayana phytochemicals with modern molecules known to target complementary pathways, so we get multi-target action. So neuroprotection, metabolic syndrome, cancer adjuvants. I'm not reading out all these things. These are just ideas of how Ayurveda can inspire such complex combinatorics to address, complex and chronic diseases. So finally, we would need all these tools from modern science like chemoinformatics, combinatorial chemistry, network pharmacology, molecular docking dynamics, AI ML optimization, pharmacokinetic boosting. All these are the tools. And developing Ayurvedic combinatorial libraries, curated libraries of bioactives, looking at the most established Ayurvedic herbs, and then personalized molecular cocktails by linking with Prakriti-based genomics, and then green chemistry synthesis. These are all the possibilities that you can see. So at the end, I've tried to focus a little bit more on my area of interest, which is pharmacology and the development of Ayurveda-inspired, new drug dosage forms that that work within the holistic framework of Ayurveda, but are still enhanced by modern scientific tools. So I'm coming to the end of our discussion. Ayurveda offers the blueprint of synergistic multi-compound therapies, and modern pharmacology offers the tools to decode, recombine, and optimize them into rational molecular cocktails for complex diseases. So all this can happen through clinical research partnerships, integrative hospital models, education and training exchanges. So Ayurveda is a rational, evolving, evidence-informed science. It's open to new knowledge and information. That's what we saw when we explored its ancient roots, and it can enrich integrative medicine globally. So I would like to say that Ayurveda is not an alternative to modern medicine. It's a partner in healing. So thank you for your attention. And I conclude with these words here. I think I've taken about 55 minutes as was advised. And I thank Dr. Bharat Jayaramanji again for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rammanohar, for this most informative, insightful talk. I've never heard such a broad presentation of Ayurveda and modern science, a subject that spans 3,000 years. To hear a capsule summary within an hour, is so valuable. And I thank you so much for it. We have a number of very distinguished people. I don't know all of them, but I do know that there are people, Dr. Gokul Das from Roswell Park Cancer, Dr. Durga Thakral from Harvard University, and I know many of my former colleagues like Dr. Sudarshan or Dr. Akula from AIR. Many
Yeah,
others
Rasa.
whom I don't know, please forgive me, but I think you can turn on your video if you would like. And if you would like to ask a question, this would be, a good point. We can take, we can definitely take a few minutes for questions. So I'll open it up right now. Anyone would
Yes,
like to ask Dr. Ram Manohar?
So Dr. Bharat Jairam, I have a question. Can I?
This is Dr. Gokul Das from Roswell Park Cancer Research Institute. Yes, Gokul, please go on.
So as you mentioned, this was an outstanding presentation. I learned so much about Ayurveda. I've heard a lot about and long interest in this field, but this was really a great presentation. So many things you touched, so I don't have the time right now. You don't have the time, or nobody has within this short period to discuss. Some other time, I will catch up with you to discuss in detail. Maybe when I visit next time India, or over the virtually. So a couple of questions I thought I will ask you. One thing is that as you touched upon Ayurvedic concept of, do you know all the components in any given Ayurvedic drug? Because in order for that, in order to combine it with other Ayurvedic drugs or with conventional Western medical compounds, that will be very helpful. Because I might tell this because from my own research, with this combining two completely unrelated medicine that came up by some detective work based on our research, and the results, the outcome was amazing in a very difficult to treat for cancer, for example. So we are just opened a clinical trial here to pursue that finding from our research. So I was trying always, I keep arguing with the people that this combination idea of combining and synergy among the drugs, 1+1 is more than 2, that concept existed in Ayurveda, as you nicely pointed out. So is the compounds in these different Ayurvedic drugs clearly defined, or is it being defined, whether it is Triphala or whether it is Brahmi treatment or whatever, because Brahmi has probably several chemicals in that Brahmi leaves, right? So, and another thing, also the related question is that have you or anybody else in India is trying to look at the Prakriti-based genomics in the cancer context?
Sir, very interesting and relevant question. So first, you asked about how much do we know about the phytochemical constituents of Ayurvedic plants. In the last many decades, a lot of work has happened in India and also worldwide in studying plants and their phytochemical constituents. And I can say that for many of the plants used in Ayurveda, we have a fair understanding of what their composition is. If you ask whether we know every single compound, we may not have reached there, because plants contain many, non-essential things from a medical point of view, because it's a mixture of so a stressed environment, it produces what is called as a secondary metabolite, and these tend to have these medicinal properties. So a lot of these compounds have definitely been identified through techniques like liquid chromatography coupled with mass spectrometry and then gas chromatography. The only problem is that these compounds are a mixture of polar, non-polar, or somewhere in between. And we have to identify the right kind of solvents to be able to separate them. And so it's a time-consuming process over many, many centuries. Now we know that a plant contains polar plus non-polar compounds. And that is why in Ayurveda, sometimes we make a water extract or sometimes we make a lipid extract. So we are able to make those correlations. What we do not understand now is how all these compounds actually work together. Like for a plant called Semicarpus anacardium, which is used in the treatment of cancer, what we found is that it's a combination of what you can call as cytotoxic compounds as well as cytoprotective compounds.
Mm-hmm.
So this is interesting, which means that if maybe there is some mechanism whereby the cytotoxic compounds are targeted to the cancer cells, where the cytoprotective compounds work like a shield. I mean, this is kind of a very what I can say, an imagination at this point of time. We have not verified it by any mechanism, but we are finding this most of the compounds when we look at in Ayurvedic herbs or formulations, we find that it is a combination of sometimes compounds which have opposite actions. And Ayurveda texts also say that it is like a king and courtier, just like an army is formed, different ingredients together, each having a separate role. So this is described in the classical Ayurvedic text, though they didn't understand completely the phytochemical mechanism. So I think with a lot of clues from Ayurveda, which we use modern phytochemical techniques, and now we have modern methods like network pharmacology, AI-enabled modeling, I think, which can address these complexities. Still now, with all the reductionistic models available, because even in our lab where we work, all these equipments are designed to fractionate and isolate a compound. We are not really able to rebuild everything and look at complexity.
That's
so I hope.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very fascinating.
Yeah. Yes, sir, you were saying.
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
So the second question that you asked about Ayurveda and cancer, I mean, in India, we have a center which is funded by the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research in Delhi, where they have started a unit for what is called by them as Ayurgenomics. So in Ayurgenomics, they're trying to see how Ayurvedic Prakriti profiling can be matched with related genomically. And not just for cancer, but for many diseases, they're also profiling the Indian population, looking at gut microbiome correlation. The problem why we have not yet come specifically into cancer or a particular diseases the very process of validating Prakriti needs to be made more robust and more reliable. At this point of time, clinicians are doing it in a subjective manner, and there are concerns about, inter-rater variability and, inconsistency. So one of my own PhD students just, worked on a review of all the tools that are available for Prakriti assessment, identifying gaps, and then suggesting, what we should do to make it robust. So once we have a tool with which we can confidently assess Prakriti, we could then apply it to very specific diseases and then see how treatments can be personalized. Because in Ayurveda, it makes a sense. We say if it's a Pitta person, they may metabolize a drug too fast. So we may need to give them a slightly higher dose. In a Kapha person may metabolize a drug a little slowly because of enzymes are different. And then, if you give a high dose, there would be toxicity because the medicine would stay in the system for long. So these kind of clues we are able to see. And if we can make these correlations, then we would enter into the domain of personalized medicine. And I think Prakriti concept, if it's well validated by genomics, could be used in modern medicine also to optimize, anesthesia, optimize pain medicine, so that, we can minimize side effects by making it more personalized. So I do think there is a scope. And as I said, Dr. M.S. Veliyathan was a modern cardiovascular surgeon who took the initiative and brought out this first study which showed there was a correlation. But we have just scratched, the surface. We need a lot more work. Lack of funding, lack of collaboration. This is what makes the work a bit slow.
Thank you very much. I have a lot of other things to discuss with you, but I'll catch up later, either in person or virtually. So I don't want to take up all the time with other people in the audience may have questions. Thank you.
Thank
Sure,
you,
sir. I
Dr.
look
Gokul.
forward to
Dr. Rammanohar, Dr. Gokul also is a regular visitor to Amrita. So maybe during his next visit, which is maybe sometime in November, he may come there. Maybe you can have a longer discussion. Anyone else?
I do have a contact in Roswell Park Cancer Center. One Catherine Glazer. She came here. She's an anthropologist and working in Roswell Park Center. She has visited Amrita also, and we have collaborated together at the Society of Integrative Oncology. And
thank you. So if there aren't any questions, I'll close the distinguished lecture today, and once again thank Dr. Rammanohar for his very valuable time and for such a wonderful presentation on Ayurveda and its connections with modern science. Thank you, and we'll end the lecture now.
Thank you.
Thank you.